So last time we have discussed about cloud computing. What do we mean by cloud computing? What are the primary things which are involved in it? What are the benefits of the cloud? Such as we know that pay as you go, high availability, disaster recovery, scalability, elasticity, massive storage, security, and all those things. We also discussed about the concept of capex and opex, which is, and we discussed that, say, in case of cloud, the capex would be lesser. It's like the one-time investment, but operational expenses will keep on happening based on what you use. Scalability, then we discussed, and the difference between the scalability and elasticity we discussed. We discussed type of cloud, say public, private, and hybrid cloud. What are the parameters which we take into consideration to decide which type of cloud do we need to use as an architect. And also we discussed about IaaS, which is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So what all things are part of it? Like for IaaS, we know that it is like the server and storage and etc. are part of it. Server, storage, networking, these are the things which are part of it. And firewalls, when we say networking, which means that firewalls, which means that security related with the firewalls, network, server, storage, etc. And of course, the building, premises, data centers, all those things are taken care into the IaaS. And then the past we discussed about the operating system and the databases and storage. So the databases basically are, and the operating system and the databases are part of it. So then we discussed about the SaaS. So here the application is also part of the vendor responsibility. So in case if you have any doubt, any question here, you can please ask me. Okay, so I assume that there is no doubt. The things are clear. Okay. So this we discussed. Okay. Now let us go to the next. What we are going to discuss today. So today we are going to discuss various things. But again, this is when we discussed about the cloud computing, we discussed about the compute, right? And we discussed about the server and serverless. Okay. So what do we mean by serverless? What is the purpose of it? Okay. What is when we say serverless? What is the concept of it? Okay. So serverless is basically even 1 minute. Okay, so yes, okay. So let us discuss on the serverless computing. So when we are saying, okay, so my voice is breaking. Is it breaking for everyone or is it for one person? Just quickly send.
I'm able to hear Girish.
Okay, okay. Okay. So now on the serverless computing, right? So with the serverless computing, first of all, understand that serverless means what? Serverless is, okay, great. Thanks, Arpita. So serverless means what? The server will still be there, as we have seen in case of IaaS, that the servers and infrastructure are part of responsibility of IaaS, the vendor. In case if you are going for the IaaS. but we are creating the server. We are creating the server. We create it based on our own need. But with serverless application, the cloud service provider automatically provision it, scale it, and manage the infrastructure required to run the code, whatever we have, right? So we just wanted to run our code. We don't want our headache to, to create a server, or to provision it, to scale it, to manage it, etc., etc. That we don't want. So when we say saying serverless computing, so serverless computing basically enables developer to build the application faster by eliminating the need for them to manage the infrastructure, because infrastructure is the key, right? So if the developer need to manage the infrastructure, if they need to create and the provision servers, if they need to think of how, what is required to scale and manage the things, then it's like a overhead to put their code in and just wanted to run that. That is the if that is the only purpose, then you can go for serverless. With this serverless application, the cloud service provider automatically provision, scale, and manage the infrastructure. Okay. And now a serverless approach often offer developers, team, and organization a level of abstraction that enable them to minimize the time and resources investment in infrastructure management. So every component of an application benefit from this approach, from the computing and the database engine to messaging, analytics or AI, whatever it is, right? So every component of the application get benefit from this approach, using an end-to-end serverless platform that provide a comprehensive set of serverless technology is the best way to ensure that the organization gain the maximum benefit from benefit by going into serverless. Because in the serverless, the headache of everything, right, is not yours. The how to manage, if do we need to scale it out, do we need to manage it, do we need to provision it, what will happen in case of the how the messaging will happen, how the the analytics and AI things are happening. So just you need to maintain or manage your code. Just that is your responsibility. If your code is ready, you will be able to use the serverless. Okay. Now, so the understanding, so basically what so everything of everything related to the code is yours, and rest your infra is responsibility of whom? Infra is managed, provisioned, and um, maintained, right? Scaling, whether it is scaling or whatever, right? um, Everything will be done by vendor, not us. Just what we need is, just we need to maintain, manage our own code. That is all. That is the only thing which we need to do, right? So we need to manage our code. Code is our responsibility. So, and with that, we can use all the facilities of it, right? For example, if we wanted to use the databases, AI, or whatever, that everything we will be able to use, right? Now,
So,
what are different things
yeah.
which are related with the serverless computing? Say, for example, Azure functions. Okay, example of serverless computing is Azure function. So Azure function is code running your services and not the underlying platform or infrastructure. So if your code is running, your code is running uh, your just as a function, okay, on the underlying platform or infrastructure. So that is how Azure function works. Similarly, if you're talking about say serverless Kubernetes, that is another example of the serverless computing. So their developer bring their own container to the fully managed this Kubernetes orchestration, orchestrate clusters, uh, which can automatically scale, right? So the serverless function are the example. Kubernetes, the serverless Kubernetes are the examples. So serverless workflows are the examples. So these of your serverless computing, right? So the serverless function, I mean, if we talk about some little bit about the serverless function actually, what happens is that it accelerates the deployment by using the event-driven model, right? So function, as we know that how function works, the function works based on when an event get triggered, right? If otherwise function don't do anything, right? That's the basic concept of the function, right? But in case of the serverless function, the big code which is running, it's a kind of a kind of application which is running, or a part of the application is running as a function, and but it runs based on the event driven model. We trigger that automatically execute the code to respond to the event, right? And binding to seamlessly integrate automatic um, additional services. 1 minute, some question. Uh, 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 okay, serverless computing is then act as a SaaS. Okay, so the serverless computing is uh, software as a service. If you say, it is like um, not exactly the I mean, it is not like SaaS, because in the SaaS you are basically using the application. Okay, so you don't care about anything else other than your data. For example, as you know, last time I have given you the example of email. I have given you the example of Outlook. You are just using that application. You are taking care of your own data. Here, you are taking care in the serverless, you are taking care of the code. Okay. Code is your responsibility, as I said. Okay. Now, code responsibility, now it depends what type of code you have. Okay. So sometimes you have a code which is based on, I mean, which you wanted to trigger based on some event, right? So in that case, you can use the serverless functions. Okay. Now, in case if you have to run an infrastructure or something, for example, an entire application, etc., on say serverless Kubernetes. So normally, what happens is that I mean, if you go by a normal Kubernetes concept, you are creating the Kubernetes. I mean, you put the I mean, you configure everything. You put the infrastructure whatever you want, right? But in case of the serverless Kubernetes, again, everything is being managed by the vendor. You just need to take care of your code. Okay. Now, in case of serverless workflow, the serverless workflow take a take a low code or no code approach to simply, I mean, to further simplify the orchestration. Okay, by combining, by combined tasks. So developer can integrate it's a developer can integrate their uh, say configurations, right? So their configuration, etc. Those things developer can integrate. I mean, developer can integrate different services, either cloud or on premise, without coding those infrastructure, having to maintain a glue code. Just they maintain a glue code or learning new API or specification. So just they use the APIs, they put the glue code. They it's a very low code or no code approach where you can just maintain your this thing either on the cloud or on premise. Okay, serverless application with, I mean, in case if we are talking about, say, a serverless environment, with a serverless application environment, both the backend and the front end are hosted on fully managed services that handle scaling, security, compliances requirement, etc. So, the entire environment with serverless application, the backend and the front end are completely hosted and fully managed. I mean, you are using fully managed services that handle scaling, security, and compliance requirement. So if you wanted to go for, say, scaling, Suppose you wanted to multiply your backend, okay, that is your scaling. Suppose you wanted to maintain the security of it. So when and again, when I'm saying security, that doesn't mean your code security. Again, the code will be yours, right? Whether it is a glue code, or whether it is a low code, or whether it is a heavy code or function code, or in the form of Kubernetes, whatever. So code is yours, but they just maintain the the infrastructure and ensure the security of it and the compliance requirement. So the compliance requirement is again a very important thing. So you just need to say that, okay, I just want this serverless application to be hosted on, say, US or China, or whichever be the location, or India, or whichever be the location, and they take care of their the government regulations and compliances, right? So similarly, we can say that serverless API gateway. So in the API gateway is again is a centralized, fully managed entry point for serverless backend services. It enables developers to publish, manage, secure, or analyze APIs at a global scale. So gateways are very useful when we are trying to access anything from in a global manner, right? So in the otherwise we need to do a lot of work if you wanted to install the the gateway, if you wanted to put the load balancers, if you wanted to do uh, the the passing the messages, passing the information through the gateways. There is a lot of things we need to do, right? When we set up the gateway. But in case of the serverless gateway, you are just using it, like a fully managed entry point. But you analyze it, right? That, okay, you just analyze the APIs, okay? So these are the main things for the serverless concept. So serverless concept, I have given you the several different examples related with. So I have given you several different example as serverless function. Then serverless Kubernetes. Okay. Then next is 1 minute. I just need to take care of. I'm just putting you on mute. Um, okay, sorry, I was getting some call. Okay, so the serverless function, serverless Kubernetes. Then we discussed about a serverless. Okay, so we discussed about the serverless function, serverless Kubernetes, serverless workflows, right? Uh, okay, we discussed about serverless API gateway, right? What else we discussed? Serverless application environment, right? So, um, so just at a high level, we understood that serverless is not the SaaS. It is like we are maintaining the code, we are maintaining the data, we are but depending on our need, whichever way we wanted to use it, um, you know the we wanted to use the maximum infrastructure possible, but yes, we wanted to keep our code with us, right? So this is a kind of example of pass, but in a limited manner. Like with the pass, we maintain operating system also, we maintain databases also. So it's a kind of modification from the past, that we are not maintaining the operating system, we are not maintaining the monitoring or the scalability here, we are not maintaining the databases, um, but we are but we wanted to keep our code, our application is ours, and we wanted to just use our application, right? And we also wanted to, we we also maintain the code, right? We also maintain our data, right? So it is in between your somewhere in between your PaaS and SaaS concept. So it gives a kind of lot of flexibility to the to the developer to use it. And then we uh, but still developer can enjoy a lot of kind of abstraction of the the infrastructure. So developer can enjoy the abstraction of the infrastructure, but the developer still can have the control on its own code. But now it depends on, now suppose in case if the developer is using, say, serverless workflows, then developer is just putting say the glue code, and nothing much, right? So depending on whether you wanted to put your glue code, or you just wanted to use your configurations only, you just wanted to limit yourself up to the configurations only, and you wanted to still leverage your facility. That is what the concept of the serverless computing. So okay, so based on this discussion, now you can think of what are the benefits of it, right? So who would like to tell us the benefit? What are the benefits of the serverless computing? What are the benefits? Anyone?
It's cost effective.
No need to bother about infra. Yes, that is true. Cost effective or not, that is a separate thing. But yes, the infrastructure management is not your, right? That is for sure. So no infrastructure, no infra management. That is the one benefit. Okay.
So
What else?
Girish, so in that case, like, if it is example of serverless functions, so when that particular function has been used, then the charges, I'm just saying, thinking from again cost perspective, only
Mhm.
when those functions are being used, then only, there will be cost associated with that functions will be charged.
Yes. So see, function is a concept of, say, event driven. So when that event comes, then that function triggers. So in that case, yes, that the use of that function is definitely limited to that event, if we are talking about the serverless function, right? So but it doesn't mean that your cost would be, say, less or higher. That's a separate discussion actually, because when you use some services, you pay a upfront cost, right? So it depends on so therefore I'm saying that for the cost, I'm not saying that whether it is loss, less or what. It's a kind of a totally different discussion altogether. That varies from situation to situation, right? But yes, various other benefits are there, such as from the unnecessary headache point of view. So no infrastructure management is one very important thing, that you don't need to I mean, you don't want any headache, but still you wanted to have a control on your application, on your code. You wanted to utilize the infrastructure, so no headache for, I mean, from that point of view. So one is the no infrastructure management. Next is whether it is a scalability is not your headache. So it's a kind of dynamic scalability. So scalability is dynamic. So I mean, you can easily utilize that. So scalability point of view, you don't need to think of, right, that what I supposed to do or what I don't supposed to do. I mean, you are care, I mean, you can easily do that, right, without any tension. Okay. So scalability, for example, in case if you're, I mean, you are running an application, say for example Flipkart, and your workload grows because of some event, you don't need to care about the scalability thing, right? So that is not your tension. Next is that because it brings the agility, so you can quickly deploy your thing without any tension, and you can do a kind of quick time to market, right? So from market point of view, you are like uh, free, that okay, so we can say faster time to market, faster time to market. So from this concept also, this is a kind of great benefit. So we can quickly sail out our things, we can deploy the things, we don't have any tension, we just put our code and we just ready to go, right? So we don't need kind of much headache on this part, right? So therefore the serverless has like these are the key benefits of the serverless, right? Moreover, if you wanted to efficiently use your resources, shifting to serverless technology help our organization reduce ownership cost. But now when we say ownership cost, which means again, you are not taking the headache of this, right? That you just say that okay, I'll just use it and I'll go out. So for example, you are going in a hotel, you are checking in, you are utilizing it for a day, whatever the infrastructure you have. You are experiencing your those facilities, and then you are checking out. So there is no much tension that okay, I need to have the liabilities, or I need to you know go into it. But yes, the hotel room cost could be anything, right? So operational cost, the ownership cost is not yours. You don't need a kind of ownership cost, you just need to use it, and that's all. Now initially when you pay, how much you pay, that's a different thing. All right. So ownership cost point of view, so TCO, okay, total cost of ownership, you can, if you want, you can reduce it. Okay. But so these are some of the benefits of the serverless computing. Now coming to next, um, so with this we are just finishing up. Yes, Parvez, tell me, any question? Okay, okay. If you have any question, you can ask. Okay. Now next is that so with this, we have like um, completed one fundamentals of it, that okay, what do we mean by compute, and what do we mean by the serverless computing, what is the networking, what is the storage. Okay, now what is Azure? So far we have discussed about the basics of cloud, what is cloud, and we haven't discussed about much about this, the Azure. So therefore I was using the word vendor most of the time, because which whatever it is, maybe Azure or any other, you can go for that. But these are the basic the concept that, okay, what I mean, we going forward, whenever we will discuss about about serverless or whatever, in case if we talk about the IaaS, PaaS, or public cloud or hybrid cloud, and all, CapEx, OpEx, all those things, we will be knowing that, I mean, what is the meaning of it and what are the benefits of it, right? Now, what is Azure? Azure is, we know that it's a kind of Microsoft cloud, and it has, I mean, getting a very, it is getting popularity at a very rapid rate. So Azure is continuously expanding set of the cloud services that help you organize, that help your organization meet your current and future business challenges. And Azure gives you, the freedom to build, manage, and deploy your application on a massive uh, global network. Because when I'm saying massive global network, which means, as I said last time, that Azure has, say, 140 countries it has its span. So Azure provide more than 100 services that enable you to do everything from running your existing application on virtual machines to exploring new software paradigm, such as intelligent boards and mixed realities and all those things. So 100 services are like with Azure, and it's a kind of very use, and each service has its own benefits, its own features, its own things. So many times many teams start exploring the cloud by moving their existing application to the virtual machines that run in Azure. So migrating your existing app to the virtual machine is a good start, but the cloud is much more efficient than a different place to your virtual machine. So before cloud, we know that we all have worked on a lot of virtual machines, right? But with cloud, it is not just a virtual machine; it is even very big than that, because it's has so many services and where global span and all those things. For example, Azure provide AI and machine learning services that can naturally communicate with your users through, say, vision, hearing, and speech, and all those things. So it also provides a storage solution that dynamically grow to accommodate massive amount of data and different type of data. It's like, because these things are like very uh, useful, um, in case if we wanted to create something at a very fast rate, right? So, um, so Azure is like, because of its large span of and its very large global presence and so many different services, it has a kind of very robust uh, place in the market, and therefore people are moving towards it at a very fast rate. Now, coming to Azure, so Azure itself has, say, as I mentioned, that it itself has, say, 100 functions, 140 countries presence, and it provide roughly everything. But on top of that, in case if you wanted to go for, say, ISV provider, which are like the other vendors, right? So Azure has a good relationship, and it has its own marketplace where you can connect with the users with, I mean, those who are the Microsoft partners, independent software vendors, open source stuff, and start that and startups that are offering their solution and services which are optimized to run on Azure. So Azure Marketplace customer can find, try, purchase, and provision application and services from hundreds of leading service providers. So all solution and services are certified to run on the Azure, right? So that's the beauty. So and this marketplace is increasing day by day. So the solution catalog span every I mean several industry categories, is open source container platform, virtual machine images, sorry, databases, application build and deployment software, developer tools, threat detection, and blockchain. Using Azure Marketplace, you can provide end-to-end solution quickly, reliably, hosted in your own Azure environment. So with that, it has like approximately 8,000 listing on the Azure Marketplace as of now. So going forward, it will further increase. But the Azure Marketplace is designed for IT professionals and the cloud developer interested in the commercial and IT software. Microsoft partner also use it as a launch point for all joint go-to-market activities. So even if you wanted to use your Azure function, good. If you don't want to use Azure function, or if you want to use extensions of it, you will be able to use the Azure Marketplace. Okay. So one is Azure we discussed, and that is one thing. Second, we discussed about the Azure Marketplace. All right. So with Azure, we have like hundreds of services, very large global projects. Very large uh, global data centers, I would say. And then we also have, on top of that, Azure Marketplace, which is giving the lot of flexibilities in terms of, and those are even the certified people. It's not like any when you are going for open source, you most often you face a lot of challenges, a lot of trouble, because those things are, things do not work as expected many times. But with Azure Marketplace, since Azure is certifying them, so it's a kind of lesser headache for us. So still you can use the open source capabilities. You can use different type of independent software vendors. Okay, you can use like various startups, as I said, which are nowadays, which are like coming, right? So with that, we have approximately 8,000 listings as of now. So huge number of services, and it's, in case if you will go for it, you can spend years and years into it, exploring these services, and you can utilize them, enjoy them like that, right? So Azure Marketplace is a very good thing. Then next is that now we will discuss at a high level what are the core Azure services, right? So core Azure services in terms of um, core Azure services. Now we will discuss these to understand that what are the in the heart of it, in the heart of the Azure, what are the main services, or what are the main things which are very popular. Okay. Now, next is, okay, so we will discuss about, I was saying that, we will discuss about the Azure core services. What are the main core services of the Azure? We will discuss about that. Okay. Just, I'm putting one line. So this is the topic for us. Okay, so now we will discuss, in the more detail about the Azure Compute, Azure, I mean, various type of services, compute, networking, storage, mobile, and we will also have a glance of that. Okay, when we say compute, what is the meaning of it, and what are the things which are there, right? So, and at a high level, we will also get a kind of introduction on what is the compute means, okay, in more detail, right? Further more detail. So remember this thing during our class, we keep on talking about things repeatedly. For example, in our previous class, we talk about compute, right? We talk about say Kubernetes, we talk about some of the things. But now again, we will discuss it, but we will discuss it in a little more depth. And that will keep on happening continuously, so that you will see these concepts again and again many times. But yes, every time you will see it with more detail, with more expansion, right? So when you're saying Azure Compute, so first thing is compute, because without compute, nothing is, I mean, there is no meaning of these services, right? So first thing is compute. Okay. So when we say Azure Compute, so it previously we discussed about the basic cloud concept. Now we are talking about the Azure concept. Okay. So what all things we are, what all things we see as a part of the Azure services, right? So so now in case of Azure Compute, what all things we can have? So one is Azure VMs, Azure Virtual Machine, right? Another thing, which I think you know about, the virtual machines, right? In case if you don't know, you can raise your hand. But I mean, just I'm putting up some of the names, but I mean, you can ask me in case if you don't have much information about that. Okay, so Azure, similar to Azure VM, we also have the Azure skill set, right? So that is also part of the compute. Now, next we also have Azure, apart from Azure skill set, we also have Azure Kubernetes, right? So now I will not write Azure again and again, but just you can understand that when I'm talking about these services, I'm talking about Azure services only, not anything else, right? So as a part of the Azure compute services, we also have the VM, the scale set, the Kubernetes. We also have like the Azure Fabric. Okay. We also have, the Azure backend host. We also have Azure container instances. We also have Azure functions. Okay. So we also have Azure functions. We also have Azure batches. We have Azure container instances. So whenever we talk about the compute, we will only talk about these things, that these are the primary things, or these are the, I would say, the main things of Azure. 1 minute. What happened? Oh, it is gone. This is a poor thing about Paint. Okay, no worries. So now we understand that these are the, including VMs, virtual machine scale set, Azure Kubernetes, Azure services, Azure Service Fabric, Azure Batch, Azure Container, Azure Functions. These are the primary Azure compute services, right? Now, similarly, if you are talking about Azure networking, so that is, one is compute. We discussed. Second, we discussed about the networking. Okay, so in case of networking, we know that Azure, the VNets, the virtual networks, the load balancers, the application gateways, VPN gateways, DNS service providers, content delivery networks, right? Which we call as a CDN, right? The content delivery network. We talk about DDoS protection services. We talk about, say, traffic managers, which is also related with the network. we talk about when we say content delivery network, that is also part of the network. We talk about the DDoS protection. Why? Because when we are talking about the network, in case of a threat is coming, that comes through the network only. So therefore, the DDoS protection is also part of your networking, your networking services. Then we talk about the express route. So express route are the Azure over the express route provide the high bandwidth dedicated secure connections. So just like the Azure virtual network, so the virtual network are not dedicated or high bandwidth thing, but Azure express route is like the high bandwidth things, right? Azure network watchers. So if you wanted to monitor and diagnose your network, so for that, network watchers. Azure firewall, right? So firewall is always like for security point of view and for high availability firewalls with unlimited scalability. So those are the things which are which we can use for the Azure firewall. Then we also have the Azure virtual WAN. So far when we say virtual network, that is a kind of LAN, but Azure also provide the virtual WAN. So with wide area network, you can connect local and remote sites together. So these are the things um, which um, which are primary services from the Azure core services point of view. Then we talk about Azure storage, right? So storage, when we talk about, so although for each one of these, like for compute, for networking, for storage, for whatever I'm putting here, there is a separate dedicated chapters, and then that we will go for, and then we will also discuss in depth about our primary services, right, which we are using as an architect, day in and day out. Those things we will discuss. We will also discuss how as an architect you should make a decision, and we will also go for architect complete how architect thinks, how architect behaves and do the do their work. So when we are talking about storage, so storage again, there are I think five, 4 or 5 different type of storage. So earlier Azure was on like say 4 different type, was providing 4 different type of services, say the blob storage, file storage, queue storage, and table storage, right? But now Azure has also started providing the additional services, which we also talk when we are going in the Azure chapter, right? Sorry, Azure storage chapter. So Azure blob, Azure file, Azure queues, Azure table, and now Azure also provides Azure disk, right? So that ways we will discuss about, and then Azure also provide the hot code, different tiers of the services, right? So so with storage, there are a lot of things which Azure provide, and this is a very lucrative chapter because it has its own lot of different type of people. Those are coming from different, not only for developers but also for like for other people, like for testers and for others. The storage makes more sense. So we will discuss about it in a lot of detail. So then we talk about, say, different type of databases. So Azure has a lot of databases. Like you talk about the Cosmos DB, you talk about the SQL databases, you talk about MySQL, Postgre, you talk about Azure, SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machine. So that's a SQL Server. Then little lesser use, but yes, we are also able to see that synapse analytics, those things are, we can also see the database migration services. We will also see the Redis. Azure Cache for Redis. We also see the MariaDB, right? So these are the Azure, services, or I mean, particularly for Azure databases. Azure databases. So Azure provide a lot of databases. Whether you are going in the relational databases, non-relational databases, etc. Right? So Azure has a lot of things, but just for moving forward, I mean, in case if somebody will say that okay, Azure will provide, I mean, will Azure provide the MariaDB? Will Azure provide the Cosmos DB? Will Azure provide the SQL servers? I mean, will Azure provide Postgre? Will Azure? I mean, what is the primary service for analytics? So I mean, you will be knowing that Synapse is the analytics services, particularly for databases. Then you also have the database migration services, etc. So therefore Azure provide a lot of things in the databases. Then for Azure Web is again a very different or very innovative concept of Azure services. So Azure provide the app services, notification hubs, API management, cognitive search engine capabilities, web apps. So we will do a lot of practical for web app, and we will also do Azure Signal R services. So thereby, I mean, the Azure has a lot of web related things, right? Then, so if you wanted to talk about the compute services, if you wanted to talk about the network services, if you wanted to talk about storage, databases, several different type of databases, several different type of the web services. So all those things you are able to enjoy with Azure. Let me just do it in this way so that it will not go off. Okay. Okay. So these are the services which Azure can provide. So moreover, other than that, if Azure also provide the Azure IoT. Okay. So when we say nowadays IoT is like very popular, right? So Azure provide the IoT Central, Azure IoT Hub, Azure IoT Edge. That ways, various type of Azure IoT things, Azure Big Data Services. So it also provides the big data services. Big data services. So when we are saying big, I mean big data services, what do we mean by that? That Azure Synapses analytics, as I said, Synapses analytics is very useful for when we talk about running running analytics at a massive scale by using the cloud-based enterprise data warehousing that take advantage of the massively parallel processing data. So those things, and parallel processing is anyways needed when we talk about the big data, right? And then so Synapse analytics is very popular for particularly for Azure warehousing. And then we also have the Azure HD Insight, right? So HD Insight we will discuss about how we will be able to do manage cluster of clusters in the cloud. So if you wanted to manage the cluster of Hadoop in the cloud, then we will go for HD Insight. We will also go for Databricks. We will also go for data lakes, right? So these are services for for big data, for data lakes, Databricks. We will talk about HD Insight. We will talk about the Synapses and analytics. We will talk about the Azure AI, which is Azure machine learning services and ML Studio and all those things. So Azure AI and ML. So these are the things which are like, relatively very popular from the Azure point of view. Sorry. I'll go and get a glass of water 1 minute. And then certainly we have Azure DevOps. Okay. So we will talk about that how Azure DevOps can help us. Okay. So okay. So with this, I think we are already crossing, our meeting, our meeting time limit. So today we discussed on various things, but yes, in the now you understand that several different type of services and are part of the Azure within, during the Azure core services, right? I explained you at least, I think, 50-60 names of different type of services. Azure has even more than that. So um, we will discuss we will discuss on that moving forward. So now onwards, what I will do is that we will also have a kind of little understanding checks, and maybe if we find suitable, in case if I'll find time, we will also be able to increase this time and make it say 1.5 hour or like that, so that we can discuss better. So in a better way, right? Okay. So if you have any question, quickly ask me.
I
I'm just
I have a question.
okay,
Uh,
tell me.
so uh, so if possible, can you please help me with one real-time example of serverless computing? Let us say, for example, if we compare one payment gateway like Razor Pay, and if we compare it with some code like uh, Flipkart Big Billion Days, which comes every once in a year. So if we compare these two, I felt it is better to use serverless computing in case of Flipkart Big Billion Days because it uses only for 1 month. Um, it uses only for 1 month where most of the promotions and offers will be released, and most number of millions of users will be logged in during that time when compared with the other days. If this is the case, how can serverless work in terms of general codes? I mean general products like this payment gateway, where payment gateway needs to be up and running 24/7 throughout the year. And if you take Flipkart Big Billion Day promotions and all, it can run only once in a month. If it needs to run only once in a month or once in a year, something like that, for only particular period of time, we can implement serverless. But if there comes any requirement where we need to run the app or product 24/7, how can we implement serverless for that? Is it still applicable to or is it still advisable to implement serverless for such kind of things?
Okay, serverless is you can apply for any such things where you don't want an infrastructure headache. Okay, uh, as simple as that. So it doesn't matter whether you want to use it for a day or if you wanted to use it for a year. Just the thing is that if you don't want to take headache of the infrastructure, you just wanted to maintain your code and your data. So your code is yours, your data is yours, or maybe the configuration is yours. But you don't want to take headache of the infrastructure. You can go for serverless. So because but yes, now there are different options when you are going for architecting the things, right? You think of various different things, right? Whether and we will discuss about that in more detail in our maybe coming classes, maybe down the line after 3 or 4 months, maybe, because we will have, I mean, we will go in the in that much depth where we will see there are so many different possibilities which are there uh, for a same type of or for a similar type of things. There are so many different possibilities, and those things before you are implementing it, right? And so we will discuss on those criteria, and based on those criteria, then you can decide that whether you wanted to go for which type of services. But yes, at a higher level, you can think of that if you don't want to take headache of infrastructure much, but you also want a kind of control, then I think you will be able to go for it. But serverless, as I said, it sits between your platform as a service and between your SaaS as a service. So it sits between that. So you can utilize that in several different ways, right? So the example which you are taking for the Flipkart, not necessarily you will go for the serverless. You can also use the server based, but because it's not the business function which says that you wanted to go for this or not, right? If it is for a day or if it is for throughout the year or throughout the month, it is it is up to you that how you wanted to use it. But yes, one thing is for sure that since it provides the agility, so if you want to go for that, you will be able to utilize serverless because it is quick. You don't need much effort, right? You can just quickly put it, right? So therefore, for time to market, for agility, or those things, you will be able to use the serverless.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. If there is no other question, we can wind up. Or in case if any question, please feel free to put it on our LinkedIn group. And I request you to join in our group, and because that provides us a kind of interface where you will be able to ask your questions later on as well. So you should be able to ask them, and also we will be able to interact with each other easily. Also, right? So start using that.
Hi, Grish, Sapna here.
Mhm.
Can you share the LinkedIn that group which